What's up, everybody? Bandit Chad here with some really exciting news here on this Taco Tuesday. So it sounds like some reporters and automotive journalists were talking to some higher ups at Toyota at the Texas State Fair, and some pretty interesting information came out, and that's regarding basically all of the body-on-frame vehicles that Toyota makes. So for here in the States, you got the Tacoma, the Tundra, the Sequoia, and the 4Runner, and it sounds like there are definitely plans to keep all four of those vehicles alive for at least one more generation. There's also talk about updates across the entire board coming really soon. So obviously, most recently, the Tacoma got updated here for 2016, and we did receive what they're calling an all-new truck, and all new for the third generation. So basically, the major highlights of that, as you all are well aware by now, are the engine. We went with 3.5 liter instead of the 4 liter, as well as a 6-speed transmission instead of the older 4-speed, I believe. So all of that got changed around here 2 years ago, and it sounds like some similar changes are going to be made all the way across the board. So if I had to guess, I would say that the 4Runner would get a similar engine and transmission here before too long, and hopefully the Tundra and the Sequoia get hopefully a revised V8 and a 6-speed as well, possibly even the 8-speed. I know the new Land Cruiser is using the 8-speed, so hopefully we'll see that here before too long. But really the most interesting information about this whole thing is all of these are staying body-on-frame SUVs. So in a world where it seems like a lot of companies are really concerned with going to crossovers and everything else, which are not as good for off-road or towing or hauling or anything like that, it sounds like Toyota will be sticking to what they know best and building more body-on-frame SUVs. Another thing that came up in those little interviews was that Toyota is still not ruling out a hybrid powertrain. So they definitely concluded that there will be upgrades to the powertrain regardless of what it is. For the Tacoma, I would definitely guess there's probably a new 4-cylinder in the works. That one's been in these trucks here for quite a while, starting with the 2nd generation, but I would guess the 6-cylinder will stay, but they did claim that there are going to be powertrain upgrades all the way across the board. So whether this will be hybrid or diesel or whatever else remains to be seen, but I definitely wouldn't rule out hybrid. It seems like this conversation continues to come up, and no one is ruling it out yet. So I'm not sure how many people would be interested in a hybrid truck. I know that GM does sell them in California, and only the 2-wheel drive variant. Correct. But there's not really any information about those being sold anywhere else, or whether how well that would sell here for the Toyota trucks.
Right. So just kind of delving into that a little bit deeper, to address some of the issues that you all have complained about with the Tacoma. I'm sure that Toyota will of course address those things through software, it may be even hardware, if it does come down to certain things needing to be replaced, such as how the transmission has been acting funny with some of the people who have bought them, or engine issues. I'm not really aware of too many engine issues, but I'm sure Toyota will be addressing all of those issues and further refining their powertrains when those do come out.
Right, and all of this is being spurred on, and Toyota actually admitted this, because of competition. So increased competition between the Chevy Colorado, the Ranger that will be coming out here at any point, and also the talks on that new Nissan Frontier whenever that decides to come out. But with all of that competition, and the competition as tight as it is, Toyota's not just going to be able to stick to their guns and keep one generation out for 10 years like they have in the past. It sounds like they're definitely interested in trying to stay at the top of the leaderboards, obviously in terms of sales, but to do that you're going to have some pretty sizable changes. So with this 3.5 liter V6 being only as old as it is, and with Toyota putting it in so many other models, including the Camry and everything else, I would guess that would stay around, but like we were saying, there could be other upgrades to, say, the transmission or who knows what else. So definitely this is kind of a big turning point for Toyota, and hopefully it's a time in which a lot of our consumer voice can be heard. So definitely, if you have any ideas, be very vocal about them. We're trying to be, obviously through our videos, but I don't think any hybrid vehicle or any diesel vehicle would be a bad thing. You know, it's just going to diversify and allow more people to be interested in these trucks. Now, obviously, for the most of us, the V6 is fine. I think no one would complain if we got a little bit more horsepower, but it's not a terrible engine. I think we can all agree about that. But certainly the more options there are, the better off we're all going to be. So hopefully we can see that before too long. But since there is so much competition, I would expect a mid-cycle refresh, especially for the Tacoma, to come here within the next probably year or two, and whole new models for the 4Runner, the Tundra, and the Sequoia here within the next year or two as well. Six grand shifts.
Gosh, that sounds so good. Riding on rails.
All right, so really what makes all of that information that we were just talking about so interesting with the hybrid truck is that Toyota, last week we were talking about it a little bit, but there was a big announcement at the Huntsville, Alabama plant, and basically what they claimed with that announcement is that they would be stepping up and starting production of hybrid powertrains here in America. Now, traditionally, all of the hybrid stuff did come directly from Japan. You know, that's where the Prius is manufactured and everything else. But it was only in the few Japanese assembly lines where they did all this. Now they're going to be moving production of that to the United States, and all of that will be done here in Alabama. So it sounds like Toyota is certainly interested in increasing their hybrid lineup. Now, what makes this even more interesting is Lexus is not. So as many of y'all are aware, Lexus and Toyota generally do share very, very many powertrains, but Lexus says that they're not interested in doing plug-in hybrids at all, and they're just going to go straight to EVs or fuel cells. Now, there's been a whole lot of research and everything else being done at Toyota about fuel cells, but it just seems really interesting that Lexus and Toyota would be kind of going two separate directions here. So whether that's just due to you know, people generally pay more for a Lexus product than they do a Toyota, and they think that they can kind of sell to those clients a slightly different vehicle, or really what the reasoning is, but we just kind of thought that was pretty interesting. Another thing with Toyota in electric news is Toyota and Mazda are going to be doing a partnership like we've been talking about, but it sounds like Denso is also in the mix. Denso makes a lot of the electric components here for the really the whole Toyota lineup, and those three are going to be working on electric vehicles here in the coming future. So it really sounds like Toyota is doing a big shift towards electrified vehicles, which really makes the idea of getting a diesel, whether that's a Tundra or Tacoma or whatever, kind of unlikely. I really hate to say it, but I just don't really see it happening. And Toyota even says, you know, what they're marketing their vehicles towards is not necessarily heavy-duty trucks. You know, they're not necessarily thinking that their consumers tow all the time or haul all the time. They just want a really good all-around vehicle, and they think they can bring you that best with a gasoline vehicle or with some sort of hybrid variant. So there really hasn't been a whole lot of talk about diesel, but hopefully if you all can voice your opinion enough, us included in that, hopefully we can see some change and at least get an option for a diesel here in the States.
Right, so I just wanted to add a little bit to that. If for those of you that are interested in like kind of how the business of all of this works, I did see a chart breakdown of Toyota, Mazda, and Denso. Their individual investments into this partnership, and Toyota is a full 90% invested, 5% for Mazda and 5% for Denso, and really that does show how committed Toyota is to this hybrid technology. Now, Toyota is debatably at the very forefront of this and a leader in the industry with hybrid technologies. But when you do look at something like that, you know, that means that they are bringing in the different types of, I guess, technologies that each of these companies attribute to it. And with Denso, you know, they do make spark plugs and different things like that, and electronics for Toyota. Mazda has kind of, I don't believe Mazda's ever really put out a hybrid vehicle that I'm aware of. Yeah, but they do have a lot of different engine technologies, kind of how we have talked about in previous weeks for news. So we do just find that somewhat interesting. But a little bit of Lexus news, and this was actually something that I saw here on the roads here in Christiansburg, Virginia last week, right after we filmed last week's Taco Tuesday. There was a self-driving Lexus, I believe it was some sort of RX 350, an older generation, not a new one or anything. But this was in no way tied to Toyota or Lexus as a project of any sorts. It was actually owned by a company. There was a company name and it was wrapped, everything on the side. And if you do follow us on Instagram, you will see a picture of that up there. But we just thought that was something kind of interesting to see testing out here. continuing with the trend of Toyota news for today, Camry 4 2018 has earned the top safety rating pick with their Toyota Safety Sense Plus. Now, you know, that does include things like pedestrian warning, blind spot monitoring, all those types of safety features that Toyota is offering standard with the 2018 Camry. Now, of course, that is something that you do expect now with these vehicles. It is going to be standard for mostly all Toyotas, I would say, by 2019, because I know for 2018, not every single Toyota is coming standard with TSSP. Now, I did actually get the opportunity to drive one of these Camrys about 2 months ago, and this was one of the first ones that had hit the lot, so it wasn't anything special. It wasn't the V6, unfortunately. It was the 4-cylinder automatic transmission, but that thing is very, very quick, and it's actually a very fun little car, and if I had a need for a sedan in my life, I would definitely be considering the new Camry. Now, I did not get to videotape any of that for you guys, unfortunately, but it was a very cool experience.
Right, and you know, with that V6 he was talking about, that's the same V6 3.5 liter that we have in these trucks. However, that horsepower is bumped up to 305, I believe. It's
305 if you get the quad exhaust, I believe.
Okay, so
but it's 301 standard, I believe.
Okay, so you have to have 4 exhaust tips for 7 horsepower.
Yes, for whatever reason.
But you know, that's really a pretty quick car. You know, even by today's standards, and for what is normally thought of as a boring sedan, it does seem to be a pretty sweet package, and they've certainly radicalized the looks here for that vehicle as well. You know, definitely making it a lot more interesting for what Toyota is normally known as a boring brand.
Right, because with those red leather seats, you know,
yeah,
that they
exactly. They have
offer
all sorts of, I don't know if you call them sporty options or what have you.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll see that across the whole lineup. You know, it certainly seems like Toyota is interested in updating the entire lineup. So hopefully we see more sporty and more interesting variants here in the future. I think the 3rd gen Tacoma definitely looks a good bit more interesting than the 2nd gen.
Oh, absolutely.
And hopefully they carry that across the entire lineup. But our last story this week comes from GM, and it looks like they're definitely investing heavily in the future of electric vehicles as well. So what GM is promising is 20 EV vehicles by 2023. Now, obviously, General Motors having you know, Cadillac, GMC, Chevrolet, and everything else that they have, a lot of that will probably be you know, platform sharing and everything else, where, you know, it's one vehicle underneath but multiple bodies on top of that, you know, so they can sell it to different consumers and everything else. But, you know, that's a pretty big pledge. You know, 20 vehicles by 2023, that's
less than 6 years at this point.
Yeah, it's really 5 model years away, and that's a pretty big pledge there. So it looks like the future is coming more and more rapidly each week, but we'll be trying to keep you all up to date as far as that's concerned the best we can. So thank you all for tuning in to another Taco Tuesday. Have a fantastic week, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
See you guys.